බිස්කට් වේදිකාවට දැන් පැමිණි සීඝ්‍රගාමී රසයේ මංචි පොටේටෝ ක්‍රැකර්. බිස්කට් වේදිකාවට දැන් පැමිණි සීඝ්‍රගාමී රසයේ මංචි පොටේටෝ ක්‍රැකර්.
On satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is Other Derana 24/7.
Making headlines first at 9, inconsistent with Constitution. The Supreme Court rules a referendum needed to pass Inland Revenue Bill. Another milestone. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe celebrates 40 continuous years of parliamentary life. High time for elections. More calls for polls without further delay. And in sports, compounded misery. India passed 600 with both Sri Lankan openers back in the pavilion. In international headlines, Trump saga. Special counsel convenes a grand jury on alleged Russian meddling in the US presidential elections. Live across Sri Lanka, this is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Let's take you straight to the Parliament. Speaker Karu Jayasuriya informed Parliament that Supreme Court has ruled certain sections of the Inland Revenue Bill are inconsistent with the Constitution. The Supreme Court has informed that a special majority and a referendum was required in order to pass these sections. I would like to inform Parliament that I received the Supreme Court ruling on the Inland Revenue Bill. Accordingly, Section 97, 98, C1 and E, as well as Section 167 are not compliant with Article 12, 13 and 14, 1A of the Constitution. Those sections can be included only if passed by a majority of votes under Article 84(2) of the Constitution or with the introduction of amendments suggested by the Supreme Court. Section 200 of the Inland Revenue Bill is not in accordance with Article 3 and 4 of the Constitution. Supreme Court informs that it could comply if passed by a majority of votes under Article 84(2) and through a referendum under Article 83 of the Constitution.
Meanwhile, parliamentarian Bandula Gunawardena expressed views on the Supreme Court ruling on the Inland Revenue Bill.
Former Finance Minister Ravi Karnanayaka presented this bill, which would penalise the public by way of imposing revenue tax and giving dictatorial powers to the Commissioner General of the Inland Revenue Department. Myself and the members of the joint opposition, as well as other professionals, submitted around 10 petitions to the Supreme Court against this. We would support it if they remove all harmful articles from the bill and make necessary amendments.
The leader of the House today moved a motion in Parliament to felicitate Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's 40-year-long parliamentary life. Several programs were worked off at the parliamentary premises to celebrate the Premier's milestone.
A Bodhi Puja was organised at the parliamentary premises this morning to mark Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe's 40 years of continuous parliamentary service. Meanwhile, commencing today's parliamentary sessions, the leader of the House, Minister Lakshman Kiriyalla, moved a motion to felicitate the Prime Minister for his achievement. In line with a decision made at a party leaders' meeting, all the party leaders extended their best wishes to the Premier.
During the presidential election, the Prime Minister generously let President Maithripala Sirisena run for presidency. We must commend him for his ability to think in a long-term perspective in matters related to politics. We are unhappy with the United National Party's economic policy, but there is no need for vengeful politics.
Ranil Wickremesinghe has also served a very calm, a very stable and also a very subtle person. He is not one who could be easily ruffled.
He is the sharpest intellect in our contemporary political scene. He is undoubtedly one of our most gifted leaders. Unconditionally agreed to the interim self-government authority proposed by the LTTE, he would have been the president in 2005.
Honourable Speaker, I first entered the National State Council. Then I was a Deputy Minister, a Cabinet Minister, a Parliamentarian, Prime Minister and Opposition Leader. I was given the opportunity to grow. Given my experience, I would like to share the following advice. First is discipline. Secondly, patience. Thirdly, being able to work without being selfish and treat success and failure alike.
Parliamentarians representing the joint opposition and the JVP, however, were not present in Parliament today. Meanwhile, 3.1 million rupees raised by MPs of the governing party towards the disaster fund for students were handed over to the Minister of Education, Akila Viraj Karyavasam, at the Parliament.
President Maithripala Sirisena says priority will be given to youth empowerment in the agriculture sector towards achieving economic growth targets. He was addressing an event in Madavachya today.
The Berti Premalal Disanayaka Economic Centre in Madavachya was vested in public under the patronage of President Maithripala Sirisena today. Construction of the building, which had been abandoned for more than 9 years, was completed by the government at a cost of 48 million rupees.
We should create the path for future generations to move ahead with plans in the agricultural sector. The government is committed to this. In this context, youth should receive technical assistance from specialists. This is how we will be able to reap benefits. Thereby, the government will provide facilities and resources. Regardless of various accusations and criticism, I have given opportunity to the development of agriculture.
Also in local news, Commander of the Army, Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake says the security of the country is not compromised in any way. He made the remark to the media in Kandy after he called on the chief prelates of the Asgiri and Malwadu chapters for the first time since taking office.
He first met Chief Prelate of Malwadu chapter, Most Venerable Tibbatuave Sri Sumangala Thero.
We are making some changes at the moment. I met Chief Minister Vigneshwaran last week. There are certain groups in the north which are not as strong as the LTTE. Such things happen in the south as well. We don't know if it is the influence of the parliamentarians in the north, but we can see young groups rising with swords and guns. The tri-forces of the country under the president is strong. There have been disruptions to the duties of the police. In such instances, duty should be carried out. Land has to be claimed when advancing in a war, and the claimed land should reduce after it. And we are in that phase. Locations of the camps at present strengthen our security. There is no need for our presence everywhere.
The SLFP Youth Front requests President Maithripala Sirisena to take all measures necessary to protect the country from extremist ideologies spread by the LTTE diaspora. Speaking at a media briefing today, Chairman of the SLFP Youth Front, Shanta Bandara, also spoke about the no-confidence motion submitted against Minister Ravi Karunanayaka.
A number of those attached to the LTTE diaspora who are living in Europe, Thailand and Malaysia are now trying to spread extremist ideologies within Sri Lanka so that they could reap financial benefits. We are asking the President as the Commander-in-Chief to take all necessary measures to protect the peace of this country.
Meanwhile, chairman of the SLFP Youth Front also touched on the latest manifestations at the Commission of Inquiry into central bank bond issuance.
Also, we have never seen an investigation being carried out by a presidential commission into one of the country's most important institutions this way. We would never have seen the things this commission has so far uncovered if we had taken action based on the COPE report. I propose there should be changes to the COPE committee of the parliament. The joint opposition presented this motion at an inopportune time. The Commission will reveal their conclusions soon. What we think is the joint opposition presented the motion now for publicity. The SLFP parliamentarians must make a decision on this. If I were in the parliament, I would vote for the motion.
Leaders and the representatives of political parties met with the chairman of the Elections Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, today to discuss the forthcoming North Central, Sabaragamuwa and Eastern Provincial Council elections. Expressing their views to media following the meeting, various political party representatives agreed that postponing elections will harm the democratic rights of the public.
The opinion of all who were present was that postponing the election will harm democracy. The delimitation process should not be cited to postpone elections, and it should go ahead. I don't think that postponing this election is suitable for our country. Everyone is of the opinion that this violates the democratic rights of the public. The election is being postponed by the government, and there is nothing the Elections Commission could do. We said in the past, and we continue to say, not to postpone local government elections. We asked them to hold the election under the present system if possible, but they did not. The government does not want an election. The government is on a mission to safeguard their powers. We thoroughly object to this.
The Election Commission will definitely have to hold elections once the tenure of the 3 provincial councils are up. As per the provisions of the Constitution, the tenure of a provincial council is automatically annulled once it completes 5 years. The Supreme Court clearly stated in the Divi Naguma court case that a governor cannot give approval on behalf of the provincial council. If the governor is given the power to do so, the power of the parliament will be slashed. We will go to court and we will organize an island-wide protest, and we will definitely get the public their right to vote. I think they are afraid of holding an election as they know that they will definitely be defeated. Both the parties in the government will be defeated. The 5th and final day of anti-Saitam protest march organised by the Students' Movement Against Saitam was worked off today, with the protesters reaching Colombo. The march culminated in a protest rally held in front of the Colombo Fort railway station.
The Students' Movement Against Saitam embarked on its protest march on Monday from Peradeniya. Today's march started off at Kadawatha, and after passing Kiribathgoda, Kalaniya and Paliyagoda, the protesters entered the city of Colombo at around 2 p.m. The march was supported by the Federation of University Teachers Associations, trade unions and the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. The protesters reached Armour Street via Ingurukade Junction and, marching through Panchikawatta, Maradana and Technical Junction, arrived at Colombo Fort. Meanwhile, the Colombo Fort Police made a report to the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court today. Accordingly, the court issued an order declaring that the protest march should not obstruct the public, and protesters should refrain from entering government offices by force in a manner that undermines peace. Following a separate request by Kolpiti Police, a restraining order was issued by the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court prohibiting entry of protesters into the Prime Minister's office, temple trees, the US Embassy and the Indian High Commission. Meanwhile, the protest rally marking the end of the march was held adjacent to the Colombo Fort railway station and was attended by university students, trade unions as well as politicians.
The government is afraid to set student leaders free. They know the struggle will intensify. We emphasize that you must have faith in that strength, leadership and unity. We request you not to narrow down this platform or to divide it by party. This platform must be broadened and this journey must end in success. According to the essence of democracy, if an issue affects a section of society, a government must take relevant decisions based on the views and grievances of the people. But if the government tries to turn its back on this issue, we are ready to teach it a lesson.
Meanwhile, convening a media briefing, the Government Medical Officers Association alleged that there is an ongoing conspiracy to undermine efforts to gazette the minimum standards of medical education.
In 2009, Honorable Nimal Siripala gazetted these minimum standards through the SLMC and put it into the Parliament. At that stage also, as a parliamentarian, Honorable Rajasena Aradna blocked the pathway to the minimum standards. So we urged the government there should be minimum standards for the medical education, not the standards of the Rajasena Aradna or the Neville Fernando Hospital or the SITAM, but the standards to safeguard the lives of the public. So we asking to the government to take this issue into the table and sort this matter with discussions.
Also in other local stories, the government and the United Nations signed the 2018-2020 UN Sustainable Development Framework yesterday. The signing ceremony was held in Colombo last evening.
The UNSDF was signed by Ministry of National Policies and Economic Affairs Secretary M.I.M. Rafiq and UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative Una Macaulay in the presence of Deputy Minister of National Policies and Economic Affairs Dr. Harshali Silva and UNASG, UNDP Regional Director and Chair of the Regional UN Development Group Hao Liang Shu.
This is probably the first framework of its kind. It's no longer a development assistance framework, but it's actually a framework based on the global development goals, the sustainable development goals.
The agreement affirms UN assistance to Sri Lanka's long-term development priorities in 4 strategic areas of focus towards improved data, knowledge management and evidence-based policy.
Our country is faced with drought and floods. We have to look at how can we provide relief to the people in the north and north central province who are affected by drought. We have to look at how we can develop policies to find ways to face disasters brought on by extreme weather conditions by using reliable data. It is now that the people of our country have realized the importance of such measures. The Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the central bank bond issuance revealed today that Chief Executive Officer of Perpetual Treasuries Kasun Palisena will appear before the Commission on Tuesday. As per directives issued by the Commission yesterday, the CEO of Perpetual Treasuries today handed his mobile phone over to the CID officials attached to the Commission. Meanwhile, President's Counsel Arjuna Premaratne, representing former Director of Perpetual Treasuries Arjun Aloysius, requested that he be given the opportunity to view the 8,600 pages of information recently extracted from Aloysius' mobile phone. However, representing the Attorney General's Department, Additional Solicitor General Dapula de Oliveira opposed the request, saying that the AG's department could not yet conclude investigations on the matter as Aloysius has not disclosed his cloud password to the Commission. On to business news now. The Financial Intelligence Unit of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka entered into a memorandum of understanding with the China Anti-Money Laundering Monitoring and Analysis Centre and the Financial Intelligence Unit of the Kingdom of Bhutan. The MOU was penned during the 20th annual meeting of the Asia-Pacific Group of Money Laundering held in Colombo recently. Issuing a press release today, CBSL said that the MOU will enable the government to share financial information, facilitating investigations and prosecution of persons suspected or believed involved in money laundering and terrorist financing in terms of the provisions of the Financial Transactions Reporting Act No. 6 of 2006. Let's take you to the stock market now. Shares fell for a 7th straight session to their lowest closing level in more than 13 weeks, led by manufacturing and telecommunication stocks. The all-share price index edged down 0.06% to 6,567. The Bourse fell 1.48% for the week, its third straight weekly form. The NDX slipped 1.6% in July, but has risen about 6% this year as of close of trade on July 31st. Let's cross over to RM Sivanandan at the Colombo Stock Exchange for more details.
Top 5 gainers of the day were PC House, Blue Diamonds Non-Voting, Ceylon Printers, Asia Asset Finance and City Housing, while the top 5 losers were Kelsey Developments, SMB Leasing, Serendip Hotels Non-Voting, Biruvale Resorts and Tangerine Beach Hotels.
For a detailed picture of how the markets performed during the week, here is Stefan De Alves from NDB Securities with our weekly review.
Foreigners actively contributed to the total turnover, where foreign purchases accounted for 56.5% of the total weekly turnover. Net foreign inflows, which was seen since the end of 2017 January, was continued. Inflow of 877 million rupees was recorded for the week. This resulted in a total year-to-date net foreign inflow of 25.8 billion rupees, which is the highest level of year-to-date foreign inflow since 2012.
On to sports now. Sri Lanka failed to capitalise on the early wickets of India's Centurions today, conceding 3 half-centuries to India's lower-order batsmen as they visited power to 622 before declaring on the second day of the second test. Tharanga was dismissed for naught and Sri Lanka went to stumps at 50 for 2, knowing that anything but a victory at the SSC will make the 3-test series unwinnable.
Cheteshwar Pujara was only able to add 5 runs to his overnight tally, and Ajinkya Rahane also failed to hit another milestone with his 132. Ravichandran Ashwin and Riddhiman Saha both made steady half-centuries as India built their lead towards 450. But all-rounder Ravindra Jadeja at number 9 hit 70 not out before India declared at 622 for 9. Sri Lanka had the worst possible start to their innings as Tharanga fell to a reflex catch off Ashwin's bowling with the score at 0. Dimut Karnaratne then fell for 25 and Sri Lanka made it to stumps at 50 for 2, still a mammoth 572 runs behind India.
On to international news now. Special Counsel Robert Mueller has convened a grand jury on the continuing investigations into alleged Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. U.S. media report the move, which does not have to be officially disclosed, suggests that Mueller may be taking a more aggressive approach to gathering data on possible collusion between Russia and U.S. President Donald Trump's campaign team.
The grand jury has issued subpoenas in connection with a meeting in June last year that included US President Donald Trump's son, his son-in-law and a Russian lawyer. After considering all evidence, the grand jury will decide whether charges should be brought up. Meanwhile, addressing a rally in West Virginia, US President Donald Trump had this to say.
The Russia story is a total fabrication. It's just an excuse for the greatest loss in the history of American politics. That's all it is.
Time now to take a look at as to what the weather holds for the next 24 hours. Here is Catherine Ashang from the Weather Centre.
A very good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, there's a possibility of strong gusts of wind of over 50 kilometers per hour over the Central Hills and Sabragamba, North Central, Central, Uva and Southern provinces and in the Batticaloa and Ampara districts, western southern sea areas. Now, fairly heavy rainfall of about 50 millimeters may occur in the Sabaragama and central provinces and in the Galle, Mathura and Kalutara districts, while intermittent showers may be experienced in the northwestern province and in the Colombo, Gampaha and Hambantota districts. That is it from the Weather Centre tonight, but let's now take a quick look at the city by city forecast.
Well, today is Friday. With another hectic working week coming to an end, it's time to move on to a heartwarming story of the week. Well, for Dr. Amanda Hayes, delivering other people's babies is all in a day's work. However, as Dr. Hayes was just getting ready to give birth to her own child down the hall of the maternity ward, she heard cries of pain. Leah Halliday Johnson was in the throes of labor. She was afraid that no one could get into her in time as her doctor was still on the way to the hospital. But the baby she was giving birth needed help right away. Dr. Hess stepped in to give a helping hand with her expertise, helping deliver Leah's baby girl just in time, while Dr. Hess's own baby girl patiently waited in line for her turn to come into the world. A touching gesture from one mother to another, putting the other's needs before her own. And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana. We will return tomorrow first at 9. Be sure to join us then. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Good night.